Welcome to Live Well, Dream Big. I'm Suzanne Monroe, founder of the International Association of Wellness Professionals, where I've been teaching people how to live a life of wellness, tap into their passion, and go for their dreams for over 15 years. I believe living well and dreaming big starts with ourselves. This podcast will show you how to create a healthy, holistic life, empower your mindset, follow your dreams, and make a big impact. Let's dive in right now. Welcome to Live Well, Dream Big. I'm really excited for today's episode because I'm speaking to one of the world's most leading authorities on nutrition, Dr. Michael Greger, who is the founder of nutritionfacts.org and the New York Times bestselling author of several books, including How Not to Die, which is currently on my nightstand. And, March is National Nutrition Month, and it got me thinking, nutrition is one of the most confusing aspects of wellness, and maybe you can relate, right? There's so much contradicting information out there about what to eat and what's best for our bodies, from plant-based eating to paleo, right? To keto and everything in between. And with all the conflicting information out there, I think it's left people pretty overwhelmed and confused about knowing what to do. So I thought it'd be interesting to bring on a few of the top experts and leading authorities in nutrition who even have opposing views, so we can have some real conversations about this and get to the bottom of what the best way of eating is. And we're jump-starting these conversations with Dr. Greger today, who is going to talk about how not to die and plant-based eating. And I think you're really going to enjoy the conversation we're having today. So let's dive in. Welcome, everybody. I'm thrilled to be here today with a very special guest, Dr. Michael Greger. He's a founding member and fellow of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine and a physician and New York Times bestselling author and internationally recognized speaker on nutrition. He has videos on more than 2,000 health topics freely available at nutritionfacts.org, with new videos and articles being uploaded almost every day. He's lectured at the Conference on World Affairs, testified before Congress, and was invited as an expert witness in the defense of Oprah Winfrey in the famous meat defamation trial, which you probably remember. He's a graduate of Cornell University School of Agriculture and Tufts University School of Medicine. 3 of his recent books, How Not to Die, the How Not to Die Cookbook, and How Not to Diet, all became instant New York Times bestsellers. And his latest book is How to Survive a Pandemic, which I'm excited to read, but it was recently released in May. All proceeds he receives from the sales of his books go directly to charity. Again, welcome, Dr. Greger.
I'm excited to rock and roll. Let's do this.
Let's do this. Well, I got to say, I've been busy reading your book. Here it is. It's been on my nightstand over the past few weeks. My family can attest, since I've been filling the pantry and fridge with some new items for everybody to enjoy. Nice. So I'm very excited. And again, thank you for taking the time to be here today. To start us off, of course, you share your story of what happened in your own journey and your videos in your book about how you decided to go to medical school, the story of your grandmother's health, which is so amazing. Can you touch a little bit maybe on that, but on the journey that kind of happens after that as well, on when you actually decided to become plant-based for yourself? And was that something that was hard for you to do?
So it was summer, July 1990. With the publication in The Lancet of Dr. Dean Ornish's lifestyle heart trial, which proved for the first time with a randomized controlled trial using something called quantitative angiography, showing in black and white arteries opening up without drugs, without surgery, just a plant-based diet and lifestyle program. And so there it was. And so my grandmother's relationship with Pritikin going back into the 70s. I mean, Pritikin was reversing heart disease by the thousands, but that was before we had angiography. But back then it was basically a clinical diagnosis. You said you had, chest pressure when you're walking upstairs. Okay, you're diagnosed with heart disease. And then all of a sudden chest pressure goes away. Well, obviously you never had heart disease, because heart disease is irreversible. It just gets worse, 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 than you die. And so Ornish was the first to show that, no, indeed, this symptomatic reversal, the fact that you can, in 90% of people within 3 weeks cut out their angina just by changing their diet and lifestyle, that what was actually happening inside their body reflected that with improved arterial function and structure over time, the reversal of the number one killer of men and women. And so if that was all that a plant-based diet could do, reverse the number one killer of men and women, then, shouldn't that be the default diet until proven otherwise? And the fact that we can also, it's the only diet that can also reverse, other leading killers like high blood pressure and type 2 diabetes would seem to make the case for plant-based eating simply overwhelming. So that certainly did it for me. And never look back.
Well, it's an amazing story, especially, how you decided to go to medical school, of course, because of this happening to your grandmother and how she added decades to her life. And I got to say, I've heard thousands of stories over the years from our community on people who first get started in wellness and follow their passion. And there's this common thread from almost everybody. They have this personal life-changing health experience, either their own life or a family member, and it impacts them so strongly that they decide to do something about it. And wow, you have decided to do something major about it.
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate that the science is not enough. We have this mountain of evidence. But you're right. I mean, we are kind of storied creatures. And it often takes some kind of personal impact to really change. When I go to these lifestyle medicine conferences and, sit down, by now there's thousands of physicians in these conferences. And I ask, how did you get into this? Obviously, we're going to taught about anything nutrition in medical school, right? So why are you now doing a lifestyle medicine practice? And often it's a patient. It's a patient teaching them. They'll have, one of their patients that they've seen forever with some chronic lifestyle disease, type 2 diabetes. And, what can we do in primary care? We can slow down the rate at which they go blind, slow down the rate at which they lose their kidney function, and progress towards lower limb amputations, et cetera. But it's depressing practicing primary care medicine these days. But then all of a sudden they come back to us and their insulin needs have dropped and they lost all this weight and they're feeling great. And you're like, what is going on? I've known you for years. And they say, oh, they saw, Forks Over Knives, or read the China study, or, saw all these wonderful documentaries out there and books and websites. And they started eating a diet centered around whole plant foods, reversing their disease, and become drastically over-medicated. They have to de-prescribe medications. And all of a sudden, they may be off insulin altogether with normal blood sugars on a healthy diet. And, and the doctors think in the back of their mind, wait a second, I've got thousands of patients like you. They dig a little deeper and then they practice the kind of medicine that they dreamed of when they went into medical school, kind of reignite that idealistic spark that you want to go and you want to help people. But it's hard to, reverse lifestyle diseases if people continue to eat the same lifestyle that led them to the disease in the first place.
And you're touching on something here with the medical community. We have a couple questions coming in on that, which I want to ask you. But before we get too far along, let me just back up a minute, because most of our listeners here know what it means to have a plant-based diet, but many listeners might also be new to this. So because terms evolve a little over the years, you may have heard of being a vegetarian or vegan. Tell us, does plant-based mean that you have entirely eliminated any foods like meat, dairy, anything that does not come from a plant? Let's just all get grounded on what we're talking about here.
Right. Yeah, no, I'm so glad you brought that up, because there's a lot of misconceptions out there. It does not matter what you eat on your birthday, holiday, special occasions. It's really the day-to-day stuff that adds up. And on a day-to-day basis, the best available balance of evidence suggests that we should try to minimize our intake of meat, eggs, dairy, and junk, and maximize our intake of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, which are beans, split peas, chickpeas, and lentils, nuts and seeds, herbs and spices, mushrooms, basically real food that grows out of the ground. These are our healthiest choices. And the more we can center our diets around them, the better.
Well, thanks for clarifying that. And I love you share a story in your book. There was a man who said, okay, I can't go plant-based because I'm going to miss either was his mother or grandmother's chicken noodle soup too much. And you were like, that should not stop you from, eating more fruits and vegetables.
Eat all the chicken noodle soup you want, but that doesn't mean that you can't, eat oatmeal the next morning for breakfast.
I love it. So, we're talking about going plant-based. You say in your book that the number one killer is heart disease and that plant-based eating is really the only evidence-based approach proven to reverse that. So with that being said, and what you said earlier about, the medical community, why isn't the medical community talking about this more? They're waiting to hear from a patient about it. And are we making any progress? Have we made any progress in the last 10 years with adding more evidence-based nutrition to our curriculum or what doctors are presenting to patients?
Yeah, doctors have a severe nutrition deficiency in education, right? Many doctors
Mhm.
are just never taught about the power that nutrition could have on the course of illness. And so they graduate without this powerful tool in their medical toolbox. Now, look, there are also institutional barriers, time constraints, lack of reimbursement. In general, doctors here in the States are simply not, kind of paid to help people take better care of themselves. Of course, drug companies also play a role in influencing medical education and practice. We can, ask your doctor when's the last time they've been taken out to dinner by Big Broccoli. It's probably been a while. But I draw a parallel with smoking. By the 1950s, we already had literally decades of evidence, starting back in the 30s, linking lung cancer and smoking, but it was ignored. Why? Because smoking was normal. Most doctors smoked. The average per capita cigarette consumption, 4,000 cigarettes a year, meaning the average person walking around smoked a half pack a day, right? The American Medical Association was encouraging everyone to smoke in moderation, right? So there was this disconnect between the science and public policy. And it took more than 25 years and 7,000 studies before the first Surgeon General's report against smoking came out in the 60s. And so we're in a similar place today, where there's this overwhelming mountain of evidence showing us the best way to eat, but that's just not the normal way to eat. And unfortunately, we're not sticking to the science. But until the system changes, we can take personal responsibility for our own health and the health of our patients. Until the society catches up, we need to take the first steps because it literally is a matter of life and death.
Well, I love that you said we have to take this personal responsibility, right? And we can share the message of wellness, which is what so many people in our community are doing and getting the word out. Yet many people have heard the term the SAD diet, right? The standard American diet, which unfortunately is now adopted in many other countries as well as they've been introduced with processed foods. I mean, is there a tipping point coming where things might change? Because like you said, if doctors aren't getting the education on this, the corporate budgets aren't behind it for promotion, how do we get this? How do we start changing the minds of people out there that maybe don't know they should be taking personal accountability for it? They're still eating the standard American diet. Is there anything that we could be doing?
Well, I think a lot of it is ignorance. I mean, they just don't know. There's literally $1 trillion industry trying to get them to eat absolute crap. That's what's on TV. That's what's on commercials. That's what's on every ad. There's tremendous, we're just bombarded all day long, every day, by these messages to eat the most profitable foods, which just so happen to be the least healthy foods, right? I mean, produce goes bad, right? Fruits and vegetables go bad. It's like you're not going to make any money. What you want is a snack cake to last on the shelves for a few weeks. And look, you can't brand it. I mean, even a broccoli grower is not going to put an ad on TV for broccoli because you'll just buy their competitors' broccoli, right? You're never going to see an ad on the Super Bowl for sweet potatoes. I mean, it's just like, the system is set up to reward the sale of stuff with, cheap taxpayer subsidized ingredients like sugar and corn syrup and corn. And so, so look, how much does Coca-Cola cost to make, right? I mean, it's just like, brown sugar water, right? So it's like all profit. And so that's great for the stockholders. And that snack case is good for shelf life, but not human life. And so just the system is set up to reward the worst possible behavior. I mean, that's why we had a tobacco epidemic, which literally killed millions. It was such a profitable industry. And so we just need to fight back. So we can't let them, my treadmill failed me. Hold on.
Tech issues.
Tech issues. Oh, all right, here we go. Yes. So it's really about, I mean, you're not going to get it from more kind of traditional sources that may be, that may be influenced by industry. And so we have to stick to the science and go to the peer-reviewed medical literature. And we have scientific consensus going back decades for the key elements of healthy eating. I encourage people to check out the True Health Initiative, which is truehealthinitiative.org. It's like the IPCC of nutrition, where Dr. David Katz, the head of the Yale Prevention Research Center, brought together hundreds of the top nutritional professionals in the world, like Walt Willett at Harvard, all on a list, to agree to a consensus statement as to what is the healthiest diet. No surprise, it's a diet centered around whole plant foods.
It's nice to see some consensus, because there are so many kind of conflicting views out there. And I got to say this, Dr. Greger, in all transparency, in a couple upcoming episodes, I'm also going to be interviewing some experts who say that eating a keto diet or even a paleo diet, focusing on animal protein, higher fat, is the way to go. The reason I'm doing this, by the way, is because I do think people are utterly confused, because there's so much information at our fingertips today. Articles, experts who have, conflicting information, I guess, when it comes to what to eat. I'm not sure having these different episodes is going to clear anything up for people, but let me ask you this. And by the way, I will make sure that I ask them this as well. What do you say to those other experts who believe eating keto or paleo diets are really the way to go, especially for people who want to lose weight? Because you do hear that a lot when it comes to weight loss specifically.
Yeah. So, I mean, I tell people, don't listen to me, don't listen to them, listen to the science, right? I mean, anytime anyone tells you something, you say, well, wait a second, you weren't born with this information. Where'd you get it from, right? Did you get it from some checkout aisle magazine, or did you actually, was it, based on the peer-reviewed medical literature, which is the gold standard in terms of what we know about anything in life. And so when it comes to something like, buying a toaster on Amazon, yeah, some random opinion from some stranger in a review may actually be beneficial for you. You actually may take that into account. But when it comes to something as life and death important as the health and well-being of your family, what some schmo says at the gym, you're actually going to change your life. I mean, that makes no sense, right? We're literally talking about the leading killers. And so if there's ever a decision in life that we want to be based on the evidence, the best available balance of evidence, let it be the health of our family. And so you go to the literature, and there's, again, only one diet ever proven to reverse our number one killer of both men and women, heart disease. Look, that should be it. What else do you need to know? And I mean, no other diet can purport to say anything like that. And in fact, look, can the keto diet help you lose weight? Absolutely. You know what else can help you lose weight? A good meth habit, right? Tuberculosis will do it. Chemotherapy will do it, right? The goal to weight loss is not to fit into a skinnier coffin.
Are we obsessed with looking a certain way that we're doing these extreme things, and we're not listening to evidence? We're just looking at anything that's going to be a quick fix. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, of course we are. I mean, there's a whole beauty industry set up, and that's why I wrote How Not to Diet, which is the book previous to the pandemic book, where I just got, so sick of all the nutritional noise and nonsense out there that I wanted there to finally be an evidence-based diet book. And to that end, I cite literally thousands of studies digging up every possible tip, trick, tweak, technique proven to accelerate the loss of body fat, to give people every possible advantage, and basically build the optimal weight loss solution from the ground up. And the good news is you do not have to balance efficacy with safety. The cigarette smoking help you lose weight, right? But yeah, there's the whole dying or, drowning from lung cancer, horrible death kind of thing, right? No, you actually can get the best of both worlds. And indeed, in the book, I talk about the broad study, which showed the greatest weight loss at 6 and 12 months compared to any other a trial in human history published in the peer-reviewed medical literature that didn't restrict calories or enforce exercise. And what was that most effective diet ever published ever? A whole food plant-based diet. So the best of both worlds, healthiest, most effective for weight loss, put it together. That's the way to go.
Well, at least somebody is out there spending the time going through all the articles and the evidence, because that must be taking you a lot of time to do. So we're grateful for that. As I mentioned, I've been reading your book, taking in your nutrition tips for the last week or so. I consider myself a pretty healthy person, having been in the wellness field for the last 15 years or so now. But you know what? I think we can all get stuck in our ruts, eating the same food, forgetting to get the right amount of certain fruits and vegetables. So I've had a lot of fun with your tips. As I said, I'm drinking my tart cherry juice, eating some goji berries, and my son is now eating seaweed. So that is pretty exciting. Um,
Fantastic. Ah,
yeah.
congratulations.
Well, and I love the tools and tips you provide. I think the daily dozen checklist, it helps people stay on track for the day. We had a question coming in about this, like, what are some suggestions for people who want to go plant-based for the first time? Should they go all in? Should they do it gradually? Is there any specific tools that you think are helpful for them? What are your thoughts on
Yeah,
going
I
cold
think the
turkey?
most important thing is sustainability, right? It doesn't matter what you eat today or tomorrow or next week, but what you're eating for the next few decades, right? So you have to do it whatever pace will enable you to stick with it forever. And so for a lot of people, that means let's start with a good healthy breakfast, right? And then the rest of the day we need whatever, and then we move on to lunch and we can slowly kind of make the transition. For some people, that's the way to do it, because then you got to find things that you love, the taste of, that are convenient, that are easy for you, that you enjoy. At the same time, the slower you go, you're not going to feel the effects. You're not going to experience the benefits, or at least not for a while. And so that's why, if you're able, I encourage people to really jump in. There's this wonderful resource called the 21-Day Kickstart Program. It's at 21daykickstart.org. It's entirely free, starts the first of every month. Hundreds of thousands of people have done it. It's done in a bunch of different languages. And so you kind of join as kind of a social media group, and you get daily tips and recipes and motivation. The hope is you dive in 100%, but just for 3 weeks, right? So it's like you tried like a free trial, right? It's hard. I used to recommend this to my patients all the time, because it's hard for them to imagine a life without pepperoni pizza. But I said, no, we're just talking 3 weeks. Give me 3 weeks, and the hope is by the end of those 3 weeks, going all in, that you will feel so much healthier, better sleep, better digestion, less painful periods, whatever it takes. And then by the end of the 3 weeks, you have that internal motivation. It's no longer a doctor wagging their finger at you. Your own body is telling you that this is the way to go. And that can help give that extra motivation to really stick with it long term.
I love that, because we have to try things out. We can't just take the advice from someone else. We have to actually experience it. So that makes total sense. I want to get to one of the submitted questions we have from Danny, because she's been told by her doctor that she has high cholesterol and that it's likely due to genetics and not diet, and they've suggested she go ahead and start medication. Now, are there any cases like this where genetics play a role and we can't change our genes, our diagnosis, because of our genes? Or what advice would you have for someone like Danny?
Oh yeah, there's about 1 in 500 people have what's called familial hypercholesterolemia, where people end up with cholesterol in the quadruple digits and usually die in their mid-20s from catastrophic heart disease. And for those people, they need these new PCSK9 inhibitors, kind of the strongest drugs we get, and their life's going to be cut short. But for the vast majority of people, diet is the single most important indicator of their LDL cholesterol. And there's 3 things that make your LDL cholesterol go up, which is a primary risk factor for our number 1 killer. Number 1 is trans fats, thankfully been removed from the food supply largely. Second is saturated fats found in meat, dairy, and processed junk. And third is dietary cholesterol, found concentrated in eggs, but found throughout animal products. By cutting down those, most people will end up right perfect. So the average total cholesterol, people who do that, falls under 150, which should be an LDL of about 70, which is perfect for primary prevention. If your cholesterol it's a bell curve though, and some people can end up higher on that based on genetic factors. And so then you have to go that additional step of beyond just removing foods that raise your cholesterol. You have to actively add foods to your diets that pull cholesterol from your body. And so that would be foods with a lot of soluble fiber, like slimy foods like okra, oatmeal, eggplant. that pulls cholesterol down, nuts every day. There's a number of foods, the so-called portfolio diet from David Junkins at the University of Toronto showed that using his diet, you can pull cholesterol down as effectively as one of these statin drugs. So you can get all the benefits without the risks. And you have these additional benefits like decreasing risk in diabetes and high blood pressure, where statin drugs actually increase your risk of type 2 diabetes. But that's only like killer number 6 and heart disease killer number 1. So if you refuse to change your diet, then those drugs can be helpful, but it's better to go the natural route.
Well, right. And so you could go the natural route, even do it for the 21 days, like you said, maybe get retested and start to see some results.
Absolutely. Right. And the portfolio diet changes were after 2 weeks. After 2 weeks of eating healthy, they had a 30% LDL drop, which is what you'd see after like 6 months on a statin drug.
Wow, that's incredible. We had another question that came in from Lizzie, who says she's plant-based, but she's struggling with her digestive health. And she's not sure what the underlying causes are, whether it's related to diet or not. But her question is, what are your views on the link between plant-based diets and digestive health?
Oh, well, that's certainly a big topic. But for inflammatory bowel disease, for example, Crohn's disease, inflammatory bowel disease, the most potent intervention ever shown in the medical literature wasn't some drug or steroid, but plant-based diet. Shown by a Japanese group for Crohn's disease that's since published on ulcerative colitis. I have videos showcasing all those studies on nutritionfacts.org. Also beneficial for irritable bowel syndrome, decreased risk of colon cancer. I'm trying to think, diverticulosis, which can lead to diverticulitis, is a fiber deficiency disease. Where's fiber found? Only one place concentrated, and that's whole plant foods. Yeah, I mean, that's, if you want intestinal health, you need to feed your good gut bugs with prebiotics, which are resistant starch and fiber. Again, where are they only found? Throughout the plant kingdom, but specifically in some of the drier plant foods like legumes and whole grains.
Well, thank you for answering that. I want to switch gears now and open up to our live audience and our talk back time and go to some of our holistic wellness coaches who are joining us live, see if we have any live questions. I know Kim is out there who wants to ask a live question today. I'm going to give her a microphone. She's a certified holistic wellness coach, actually a master coach, the owner of Creating Legacy Wellness. Hey, Kim.
Oh, there we are.
There you are.
Hello, Kim.
Hello. I'm so excited to be here. So my big question is, we've seen how the media plays a role in health, just from, 2020 and everything that we've seen. And, I really appreciated your analogy with smoking on the TEDx from the 1950s. Do you see opportunities for wellness coaches to help change and influence the media perspective?
Oh my God, I certainly hope so. I mean, that's, having allied health professionals like health coaches, critically important. I talked about some of the barriers in primary care in terms of lack of reimbursement. I think I encourage, that's what these lifestyle medicine conferences always are doing, is encouraging doctors to delegate that, they can give them the why. Look, you have high blood pressure, you have high cholesterol, you need to change your diet. And I am now going to send you next door to my resident health coach who can actually put it into practice and go shopping with you, can go clear out your pantry. I mean, this is the kind of day-to-day grocery store type decisions that coaches can help with to, have people fit this into your daily diet. And it's one thing for a doctor to say you need to eat dark green leafy vegetables for the nitrates to open up your arteries. Okay, fine. How do you actually make them taste good? Right? These are some of the avenues by which health coaches and other allied health professionals can really come in and actually take the information and turn it into action. All the science in the world is useless if you can't actually get people to eat these really healthy foods.
Great question. I love that. I think that's such a good point. Part of it is doctors don't have time to do all this extra counseling and showing people how to actually implement, right? It's an awesome place for wellness coaches to really come in and as that guide. So thanks for your question, Kim. Anybody else out there have a question today for Dr. Greger? Now's your time to go ahead, raise your hand. Or if you're on phone, just unmute yourself as well. I see Eileen, is that you raising your hand there? Let me give you a microphone. Hi, Eileen.
Hello. Hi, Dr. Greger.
Hello.
Hello. So there has been a lot of studies on fasting, on the benefits of fasting. What are your thoughts on fasting and plant-based diet?
Oh yeah, actually in fact, the largest chapter in How Not to Diet is on fasting, just because there's so many different types. There's intermittent fasting and water only fasting and modified fasting and alternate day fasting and 25-5 and 5-2 and on down the list.
Absolutely.
And I think and so I go through each of them, talk about the pros and cons. And I think the bottom line where it really kind of shakes out, spoiler alert, is there's the best evidence is for early time restricted feeding, meaning you restrict your daily eating window to 12 hours or less, but critically important, that window is earlier rather than later. So if anything, you skip supper, not breakfast, the more we can weigh calories towards the morning, the better, because of because of our circadian rhythms. So early time restricted feeding is probably is the most robust evidence we have in terms of fasting. But there are some benefits to some of the fasting mimicking diets and other things, and I go through that in the book.
Thank you so much. I'll look forward to getting your book.
Thanks, Eileen. And Ellen is asking a question, which had also come in a couple of times from a few other people. She wants to know, besides nuts and legumes, what would you say are the best plant-based protein sources? Protein is such a hot topic these days.
Perpetually, indeed. Legumes, right? So I mean, it's whole grains, but really, I mean, anyone who doesn't know how to get enough protein on a plant-based diet doesn't know beans. And indeed, legumes, beans, split peas, chickpeas, and lentils. These are the plant protein superstars. Superstars have everything you want in a protein source, like the iron, the zinc, plus all these things missing from animal-based sources of protein, like all the stuff in the vegetable kingdom, like the folate and the fiber and the potassium, all these other wonderful things. The best of both worlds when you get your protein from plant-based sources. And so if you go to the Harvard School of Public Health website, it says plant protein is preferable. Why? Because of the package. But food is a package deal. Yes, there's iron in beef and protein in pork and calcium in dairy, but what is all the baggage that comes along with it, like the saturated butterfat and cholesterol, etc. Whereas you just get the best of both worlds when you get it from whole plant sources. Then you get the antioxidants and phytonutrients, all these other wonderful things, all packed together when you eat whole plant foods.
It keeps coming back to whole plant foods.
Indeed. And that's a perfect place to leave off of. Unfortunately, I got to jump on to another interview, but thank you so much. Keep up the wonderful work that you're doing.
Dr. Greger, thank you for being here with us today. It's been so wonderful having you. We obviously could chat your ear off for hours, but we're so glad you spent some time with us today. And thanks to everybody for joining us. We'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye. Thank you for joining me for today's episode of Live Well, Dream Big. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation, and I want to invite you to take your next step toward living well and dreaming big by downloading the Live Well, Dream Big lifestyle book. It's the ultimate guide to becoming your best self and living life on your own terms. You can grab your complimentary copy by going to the link in the show notes or heading directly to iawpwellnesscoach.com/guide. That's iawpwellnesscoach.com/guide.